Welcome to today's video. I thought that we would end the year with some exercises. So nobody's starting a new project here at the end of the year. No one is. Maybe you are finishing a project, but I thought it would be great to practice writing with clarity and precision. So I'm going to present a few exercises for you to try, have some fun, practice writing without any pressure. That way you keep writing through the end of the year, but something enjoyable, something where you're just practicing on getting better. So let's get started.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julie Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julie Amante. I'm a women's fiction author, also a teacher and a professor. So today I am putting my professor hat on and teaching you a few exercises so that you again can try these without any pressure. Just have some fun here at the end of the year. So I'm going to share a screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. The first exercise is the 25-word summary. So 25 words is not a lot of words, right? But editors, agents, marketing people will sometimes tell authors, hey, give me a very, very short summary of what your project is about. And you have to be able to do that. You have to, in a couple of sentences, be able to explain what your story is about, what your project is about, what is the essence of your story, what is it that you're trying to say, what is the theme. So it's really good practice to be able to boil down your story to just a few words. What is it really about? So for this exercise, what I'd like you to do is write a 25-word summary of your story, or even a chapter if you want to practice, just, summarizing your chapters of a novel that you're writing. Again, just trying to boil down, what is this story about? I suggest actually an entire story, or an entire novel, because that's really great practice, right? If I can take an entire story and tell you exactly what that story is about, who are the characters, what is the conflict, what is the theme of the story? If you can get your story down in just 25 words, that's great practice. And in the future, when someone asks you, what is your story about? You'll be able to tell them clearly without having to go into a long description of what your book is about. And the second part of this is just challenging yourself to eliminate filler words and focus on the core message. So anything extra that you have in there, take those words out and just focus on who are the characters, what is the conflict, what is the theme of your story, and that should give you those 25 words. The next exercise is to learn how to edit and cut unnecessary words. So again, the whole point of today's video is to teach you how to write more concisely, right? Because the more concise you can write, the clearer, the better your stories are going to be. So edit. How do we edit? So back when I first started writing romance fiction for Kensington, the word count for those stories were about 55,000 words. Sometimes I'd go up to 60,000, but they were short little romances, and I would find that I was always going over, right? So I practiced cutting about 10% of my novel each time. And I found that the plots of my novels were actually better. They were clearer and more focused, and it was just a better story without all those excess words that really didn't need to be in there. Now, later on, I started writing more mainstream fiction, and I could write up to 80,000 words. But guess what? I would sometimes go over on those words too. And even when I didn't, I would still go back and try to cut about 10% of my novel, because again, I've learned that I tend to overwrite, and I write words that are really unnecessary. I write wordy sentences, and it was a good challenge for me to rewrite some of those sentences so they weren't as wordy and they weren't as confusing maybe to the reader. So for this exercise, what I'd like you to do is to make each one of your words count. Right? So the more words you cut, the clearer it's going to be, and you'll find that you think of more creative ways of saying something if you have to use less words. So I want you to take a short story or even a chapter of a book that you're working on, and I'd like you to cut 10% of the words without losing any of the meaning or feeling of your story. So This again will help you cut all that fluff or all the unnecessary words that aren't super important for the story. And once you do that, I'd like you to try that with a paragraph. So take a paragraph and do the same thing. So try to cut it maybe about 10%, rewrite the same thing using fewer words. What you'll find is that you'll have more space to write things that really matter because you're not wasting space writing long, wordy sentences or overly descriptive things that don't need to be overly descriptive. Okay, so give that one a try. The third exercise is on sensory overload and selectivity. So one of my weaknesses is that I'm not an overly descriptive writer. So sometimes that leads to bland, kind of boring writing, right? Without really describing anything or not having all those sensual details that make reading a story so wonderful. So to make up for that, in my rewrites, I would overload my story with sensory details, describing everything, all the different feelings that the character is having, all the sense, all those sensory details. And what that results in is, going back third, fourth rewrite, now there's sensory overload. There's just too much. Like we don't really need the character to smell everything, touch everything, taste everything. There needs to be maybe one of those sensory details in there, but not all of them. So we need to be selective in the sensory details that we add to the story. We do need to have them in there, but we don't have to have all of them. So for this exercise, what I want you to do is to describe a scene using all 5 senses. Okay, so use all your senses to describe whatever it is that's happening in that scene. Then I want you to rewrite it with only 2. So take all those other ones out and keep 2 of those sensory details and maybe go into detail for those 2. So really focus on what the character is noticing. And so of course to do this, you're in your character's point of view, right? So from that one character's point of view, notice like what is it that character is identifying, what is that character noticing, and it should be something that really matters to the scene and to that character. Right? So smells may not be important or sight may not be important, but it may be that hearing is super important. They really need to pay attention to what's going on because it's very dark and they need to hear what's happening or something. So really, really focus on that sense and another sense. Okay, and then do it a second time, focusing on just one sense. So when I was writing the script for this video and a blog on the same topic, it was Thanksgiving week in the United States, and so I was thinking of that, right? So for me, maybe describing an apple pie or cooking a turkey and focusing only maybe on smell, like the smell of cinnamon or butter or nutmeg that was in the air. Or maybe just the sounds, like what did it sound like in my kitchen as I was chopping and slicing carrots and onions and all that. Maybe the water running as I'm filling something up, or maybe the soft music as I worked, right? So anything that I could hear. So focus on one. This is kind of a fun, I think, exercise because it really does help you focus on just one thing and really describe something without everything else. We think of everything else at once, everything that character is noticing, and the character doesn't need to notice everything, right? They only need to notice what's most important. So try this one, see what you think. So one of the reasons that I think I lack that descriptive skill in writing is because I've spent so many years in academia, writing, things that are factual, really concise, things that lack much of a voice. So when I tried to write creatively, I had to really work to bring in that description. So reporters and journalists are in that same boat. They tend to write just factual things. They're not very descriptive. So what I'd like you to do for this exercise is actually modify somebody else's writing. So I'd like you to find an article, take any news article, and then rewrite it using your own words. So cutting the length in half, so cutting all the wordy, because another thing that you might notice if you read news articles is that they tend to be overly wordy. Like they write so many words to say very little, and they're not descriptive. It's really, kind of boring writing. So take an article, I want you to cut it in half, Rewrite it in your own words. So your goal is to make it more interesting. So not to add tons of descriptions, because we just did that. We don't want to do this again, but maybe add a little bit more descriptive words. But try to maintain the same information. Cut that article in half using precise words, strong verbs, so that what you're writing is definitely more interesting to read, way less wordy, but nice and concise. Okay, so let's try that. So take the news article, cut it in half, rewrite it in your own words, use stronger verbs, maybe a little bit more description, and make sure that it's about half the size of what it was. So if it's, 1,200 words, make it 600. All right, try that. For the last exercise, what I'd like to talk about is vocabulary precision and choosing the right words. So usually at the very end, when you are editing your story, this is when you hopefully are more picky, right? You're going through sentence by sentence and you're saying, is this the right word? Does this word really mean what I think it means? Does it really say what I want it to say? Does it have the right connotation? You look at all those things. You want to choose the vocabulary that most represents what it is that you're trying to say. So we're looking for stronger words, more descriptive words, anything that improves the vocabulary of your story. So for this exercise, what we're going to do is I want you to choose two words with similar meanings. For example, happy and content, or home and house. And I want you to write a sentence for each that highlights their unique connotations. So what this exercise does, it deepens your understanding of word choice and nuance. So for example, house and home, they have different connotations, right? So a house is just, we normally, when we say a house, what we're thinking of is a building, right? It's the actual structure of a building. When we say a home, it doesn't even have to be a building. We may feel at home when we are walking through a forest, right? We might feel comfortable. It has more to do with the comfort level. It has more to do with being with people that we love. It gives us a warmer feeling than a house. So you may have written house and decide, oh no, I really wanted to say, I went to my grandmother's house. No, I went to my grandmother's home. That gives more of the feeling that I'm trying to say with the story or with, that scene. So yeah, think about it. Take a couple of words and then write a sentence with each and see what the different connotation, what the different feelings are. And you can do this more than once, but at least do it one time where you choose two words that you would normally think these mean the same thing. But then when you write the sentences, you see that, no, there is a slight difference and a slight feeling that I get from one word that I don't get from the other. I hope that you'll have some fun with these exercises and that you'll learn a little bit about how you write and how to make things more concisely. Now, we have different reasons for wanting to do this. In fiction, we want our stories to flow better. We want it to be focused. We don't want a lot of extra wordiness that doesn't belong there. We want it to be concise, clear, focused, and avoid convoluted writing that might pull the reader out of our story. If you're writing nonfiction, you still want to do that. You still want to have precise wording. You still want to have concise writing, because a lot of times what you're trying to do is give the reader information or details that are complex, and the easier you can make the reading of it, the better experience it will be for your reader. And that way you'll build authority and trust with your reader. In business, so what I teach my business students is that we want our emails, our proposals, any kind of business writing to be super concise and very clear, because what we're trying to do is communicate a message. Readers in business are busy and they really appreciate brief writing. They brief emails, and we want to avoid just costly communication, miscommunication, or confusing messages. So practicing exercises can be fun, and mastering writing with precision and clarity is actually a really great skill and exercise. It'll make you a more confident writer, knowing that your ideas and your message is going to resonate with your readers. So try these exercises and see how much you can improve. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and share it with your friends and anybody else that you think needs to write more concisely. I will most likely see you next year with something else, although I may decide to give you more exercises this week. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, I will see you next year in 2025.